America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and I'm going to tell you why I think the Democrats shutting down government over the Republican bid to remove provisions of the ACA is a bad move. The ACA is like the Missouri Compromise. If you don't know, the Missouri Compromise was a congressional compromise that disallowed slavery in any new states, right? So the slave states could keep their slave states, but any Western expansion above the Mason-Dixie line were going to be free states, right? So undoubtedly, the Missouri Compromise saved lots of people of being, enslaved. Undoubtedly, in the same way that the ACA insured millions of people. That's great. The ACA still allowed insurance companies to dictate and ration healthcare without a real approval process, and kept it prohibitively expensive while confusing people as to whether or not they were insured. People just want to be insured or not want to be insured. They don't want to be confused about the insurance. They just want to go have their eyes checked once a year, have the teeth checked twice a year, and then just be done with it and not think about it. And not for a prohibitive amount of money. They don't want to spend their entire largesse on dental care, right? So the ACA still left them confused about whether they had health care, and kept quite a few millions of people uninsured or prohibitively priced insured, where it sucked up all of their income. And the Dems want to keep it. They want to keep it intact, and they want to defend it. The problem is that it fundamentally confuses what should be something by right, if you're going to argue that it is a right and not just a privilege of the wealthy, then you need to actually argue for it by right. And people say, just like they said with the Missouri Compromise, well, it's the best we could do. It's the best we could do. It's the best we could do. And I'm sure the Missouri Compromise at the time was thought to be the best we could do. And those are the same people who will say the same things. Slaves won't say it. Those enslaved in the South will say, no, I actually want to be free. But people in the North will say that it's the best we could do. And that is the whole problem. That's the same thing with the ACA. The only people who actually like it are people who have health care through their jobs. And they're like, well, it's the best we do. We couldn't get the votes in Congress. Well, did you really try? Did you really, really try? Because I was there, and I don't think Obama was serious about the public option. I think he told Ted Kennedy to shut up about the public option. And there was a lot of pre-compromising of rights that happened because Obama was a great pre-compromiser. He pre-compromised everything. Just walking into the room, you already got half off. It's almost grateful for you to be there. He was a great pre-compromiser. I just remember some Supreme Court battles that he just wouldn't try to pre-compromise and then get denied. That's one thing about Trump. He's not a pre-compromiser. He just goes for what he wants. In a way, they say he always chickens out, but he doesn't chicken out beforehand. At least he chickens out after. Tells people what's good. And so I appreciate that about him, which, that's a style thing, not so much a content thing. I don't appreciate too much about the content of his politics. So the Missouri Compromise ultimately had the anti-slavery party arguing for the wrong thing in the wrong way, in the same way that the ACA has Democrats now arguing for the wrong thing in the wrong way. And I'm not convinced it's going to work. I'm not convinced it should work. I think the ACA is ultimately confusing and demoralizing, especially when you have to go through the ordeal of trying to get health care, in the same way that the Missouri Compromise is ultimately confusing. Can we be a self-governing nation with slavery? Well, the Mason-Dixie line shouldn't decide that, right? So you need to actually argue for rights with the language of rights and not with the language of confusion. Like I said, the same people who support the ACA would 100% support the Missouri Compromise and say, well, it's the best we could do, even if it confuses what people about the conditions of self-governance and ultimately forgets those who are currently, enslaved, because it might not be the best thing we can do. It's the best thing that you're willing to fight for. It turns out the best thing we could do is abolish slavery. right? So we just need to stop confusing people and fight for the thing. We just need to fight for the thing. Fight for the thing. People, if you think people should be able to go get their eyes checked and their teeth checked, you need to fight for that kind of healthcare without it being prohibitively priced or exorbitant. Then we need to fight for it as a matter of right. I think maybe ambulances should be a matter of right. Right now, people are taking Ubers when they get a heart attack, and I'm not sure that's consistent with freedom because they're scared of the ambulance ride. Well, if we think these things are a matter of right, we need to organize our politics and make them a matter of right. But like we need to be honest about the kind of healthcare everybody needs and just make decisions about that and not just throw it to the market and hope that it gets coded the right way. And then you're really throwing it to the AI, right? Because United Healthcare, they've all like implemented a quality of AI that denies your claim and that is trained to deny your claim. And so it's an abrogation of right by AI through the public market, and we should just fight against it as such and not pretend that fighting for the Missouri Compromise is the same thing or fighting for the ACA is the same thing as fighting for freedom. Undoubtedly, the Missouri Compromise kept people out of slavery, just like undoubtedly the ACA keeps people on insurance. However, ultimately, it is more confusing for the project of self-governance and for the realization of right. And in the same way that the Missouri Compromise was ultimately confusing for the project of self-governance and the realization of right. Even if undoubtedly it kept people out of slavery, it was still not better than actually dealing with the problem of slavery. And so our inability or unwillingness to actually deal with the problem and take these things that are better than nothing, they're actually more confusing than nothing. Because if you have nothing, at least you know you have nothing. So if you have nothing, at least you know you have nothing. All right, so Osama Abdu says, how many books do you read per year on average? By the way, your content is top-notch, brother. The intellect and pragmatic nature you display is quite rare. Probably 1 or 2 good books a month. If you do good, I used to read more, but I'm reading harder things now. I read a lot of Hegel. So, 1 or 2 good books a month does it for me. And I have to keep up with what my kids are reading. So it's a bit more, it's a bit, not as much as it used to be, but it's enough. It's enough. So Carl Karsnak says, if you truly become dependent on the state for your very existence, you are in a very dangerous position indeed. Yeah, it should secure my rights. I'm dependent on the state for like roads and schools, I think there's a place for discretionary medical procedures, but there should be a baseline as a matter of right that you can just not have to worry about getting your eyes and your teeth checked. And we understand that we are a rich enough nation that we could spread the money around through tax dollars to make sure everyone has their eyes and teeth checks. And they get that as a matter of right. Or if they have a heart thing, they can get like a yearly physical or every other year physical without having to pay an exorbitant premium, or just end up being slaves to a bigger company. Because right now, healthcare is so expensive that it ends up being like a quality of indentured servitude or sharecropping that ties you to jobs you probably shouldn't have. And I think it empowers the wrong people in the market in a way that actually throttles the growth of small businesses. Throttle might be the wrong word. Constrains the growth of small businesses. So we clear up basic healthcare. We actually allow a better kind of capitalism, I think. And that's something I could debate. That's something that's, I think, open to debate, but the ACA isn't that. The ACA is not that, unfortunately. I think one of the reasons why the big business Democrats like it is because it actually empowers bigger businesses against small businesses. Having a monopoly advantage, not a monopoly advantage, but a distinct advantage in being able to secure health care for their employers. Government should ban junk food. That would get rid of 80% of it. All right, so I'm not a huge fan of junk food. I'm not sure that's the way. I'd like to try other things. I want people to eat better. I'm a guy who eats okay, pretty well, I guess. Given my demographic, I actually eat pretty well and exercise pretty well. I'm not a fan of it. But outright bans, I want to see some other things tried first. I want to see some other things tried first. For example, I would like vouchers for kind of private chefs that if 5 people decide in a neighborhood within like a mile radius, decide, and then maybe like public kitchens where these chefs could work. And because you can cook a lot of industrial food actually pretty well. Like one professional chef could cook a meal for 30. And I want that person to be paid well. And those 30 people can just decide a menu. I mean, that'd be like 5 families can just decide a menu, and then that chef just delivers meal, right? Carl Karsnak says, I saw a 2-year-old drinking a full-size Big Gulp yesterday given to them by their parents. All right, so does banning the Big Gulp fix that problem? No, I think we're really bad about training parents. And you know what? I'm going to do a video on that. That's going to be my next video. I think we are really bad about training parents. We're really bad about training partners and training parents. And as a result, you get parents who give their kids Big Gulps. And that is unfortunate. I think parents who give their kids Big Gulps is the problem. Not so much the Big Gulps. I could be convinced for a ban, but I want to actually just do better and more serious parental education. And I don't think we're honest about what it takes to raise a kid, or sustain a healthy marriage. I don't think we're honest about it. So the people who know this have a distinct advantage in civil society and in family relations. So my kids win. But I think as a public, for the project of self-governance, we're not just honest about the quality of attention it takes to raise a kid. And it's not as if the parents aren't putting in efforts, they're just putting in efforts in the wrong thing. They're trying to make money as opposed to like sit down with their kids. Like they actually think just giving the kid the iPhone or the iPad is sufficient, right? They actually think that, not because they're necessarily ignorant or they're kind of ignorant, but because they've been the product of a deficient culture, and because the market wants parents to think that giving the iPhone is sufficient. So there are things we do. There are things we do, and there are things we can combat with education and culture that I wouldn't be a fan of just banning, right? So I don't want to just ban junk food. I think we need, one, healthy options, to be creative about how those healthy options are produced and distributed. Not that I'm not a fan necessarily of everyone, cooking all of their meals all the time. I think there might be something a little bit more efficient than that. I think just more healthier options. Like I said, vouchers. There are vouchers, the vouchers for private chefs, right? So that if 5 families got together in a neighborhood, they would be able to pool in a voucher and then get those meals down to $10. Pool in their vouchers and get those meals down to $10 a meal for the family of 5, while the chef just kind of cooked for 30, and you could get quality control that way, and just the families would have to just figure it out. So I do think that I will read super chats. So I do think that there are ways around these problems, but I think it's important to understand the ACA is a fundamentally flawed, not just flawed, confusing and poisoned bill. And any advocacy of that is actually confusing the project of of self-governance. In the same way that the Missouri Compromise, you could say, well, it kept hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people out of slavery. It did, while also sustaining slavery. So the ACA does that. It keeps millions of people, it gives millions of people health insurance while still sustaining, as a part of its own logic, a population that is just confused and pushed out of healthcare. Right? So if you appreciate what I'm doing, which I think you should because you're not getting these arguments anywhere else, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll help you kind of give you a more interesting politics, and a politics that actually clarifies the conditions of self-governing in a way that I think is required if we're going to make this a more perfect nation and actually secure everyone their civil rights and family rights and make better families and schools and job places and all of that. And I'll do that. I'll do that to the best of my ability. And I'll continue to do that as long as you continue to support me doing that and show me that it's worth with your money, because that's how we make people whole in these United States. You show me it's worth it because of your money. The next show will be on the ill training we gave parents. And I think it comes out of the Depression. Right? I think out of the Depression. Out of the Depression, I think the baby boomers were bad parents, and then that left the Gen X people kind of confused. And and it just gets more and more clear that we need to make a public project out of teaching parenting, because just thoughtless conventions or nature or just society isn't going to sustain itself. It needs a little bit more intentionality on the part of the parents. Not necessarily on the part of the government raising your kids, but on the government teaching parents how to be parents so that parents can raise their kids. I'm not a fan of government taking over all aspects of rights. I'm a fan of government ensuring that people themselves know how to, for example, take care of their property, to know how to sustain their family, to know how to participate in civil society and become entrepreneurs, right? So there's this idea that, the government should manage all aspects of people's lives, and I'm not that kind of person. I think the government should be in charge of making sure that people can manage with their own discretion all aspects of their lives, right? So I'm a fan of private property. I'm a fan of private enterprise, and I'm a fan of, families doing what families are supposed to do. But I think the government's in charge of making sure that people have the intellectual and cultural resources in order to use their discretion in a way that supports, healthy families and good kids and good jobs and all of that stuff, and good property, right? So, I don't think the government should raise your kids. I think the government should help you, give you the resources that then you decide how to raise your kids. There's a cultural immaterial. And then through your own activity, you do it, right? So there's a difference. I don't think the government should give you money. I think government should give you resources for you to work for your money. There's a different sort of laundering of freedom through the individual's appreciation of their right, rather than just handouts. So anyway, thank you for your time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, which I think you should do, because I'm giving you a quality of wisdom that you're not going to get anywhere. Nobody else is comparing the ACA to the Missouri Compromise, and doing it, I think, in a haunting manner. Both the ACA people and the Missouri Compromise people will tell you, it saves a lot of people from this degraded condition, while keeping a lot of people in that degraded condition and people confused about whether they are going to be in that degraded condition. All right. So thank you for your time. And I will talk to you next time about the training of parents, I believe, and spouses. Peace.